It was still dark when she started walking. 5 in the morning, the 15th of February, 2015. Her husband dropped her at the Appalachia Trailhead in northern New Hampshire, watched her headlamp bob off into the trees, and drove away to meet her on the far side of the range that evening. Her name was Kate Matrosova. She was 32 years old, a trader out of New York City, and she was not some tourist who wandered up a hill. She had stood on top of Denali. She had climbed Aconcagua and Elbrus and Kilimanjaro. She trained on the stairwells of Manhattan skyscrapers with a 60-pound pack on her back. On paper, she was one of the most prepared people ever to set foot on that ridge. The sky over the White Mountains was clear when she left. The kind of hard, bright winter morning that makes you feel invincible. She was attempting a winter traverse of the northern presidential range. Up and over Mount Madison, Mount Adams, Mount Jefferson, on toward Mount Washington itself. 15 miles of exposed, treeless ridgeline, the frozen spine of the highest peaks in the Northeast. She had studied it. She knew the forecast was ugly. She figured she was fast enough and strong enough to be up and back down before the worst of it arrived. She was wrong. And I want to be careful how I say this, because Kate Matrosova deserves respect, not a lecture. She did almost everything right. She was tougher than most people who will ever watch this video. She did not come home. I have spent a good part of my life on mountains like this. One, I have turned people around on a ridge with the sky still blue overhead. And I have watched those same people wait until I was out of sight and push on anyway. So, when I tell you that a 6,288-foot mountain you can literally drive to the top of is one of the most dangerous places in America, I need you to understand that I am not being dramatic. I am being honest. Because the thing that killed Kate Matrosova is the same thing that has killed more than 160 people on this mountain, and almost none of them saw it coming. Let me put a number on it. Since people started keeping records here in 1849, more than 160 people have died on Mount Washington and the peaks around it. Falls, heart attacks, the occasional avalanche, but mostly one thing over and over in every season of the year: the cold got them. That is not a number you associate with a mountain in New England. That is a number that belongs to the big, remote, famous killers, the Himalayan giants, the peaks people spend their whole lives training for. And yet, here is a mountain in New Hampshire, shorter than a single Colorado 14er, a mountain with a paved road and a gift shop on top, quietly holding a body count in that same conversation. The observatory that sits on the summit does not shy away from any of this. For the better part of 100 years, it has billed the place as the home of the world's worst weather. That is not a marketing slogan somebody dreamed up to sell mugs. The people who say it are scientists who live up there in shifts, year-round, measuring it. For most of a century, this mountain also held the world record for the fastest wind ever measured on the surface of the Earth. Not the fastest in America, the fastest anywhere. We will get to that number, and it is going to sound made up. It isn't. So, how does a little mountain do this? How does a peak you can summit in a t-shirt on a July afternoon kill experienced mountaineers in the same breath as Everest? That is the whole story. And the answer is not a curse or bad luck or careless fools getting what they deserved. The answer is weather and geography and a trap that is built right into how easy this place looks. Here is what you see when you arrive. You drive up through the White Mountain National Forest, pull in at the base of the mountain, and you have got options. There is the Mount Washington Auto Road, opened back in 1861, a toll road that switchbacks all the way to the summit. 8 miles of it. You pay your fee, you put the car in low gear, and you drive to the roof of the Northeast. When you get to the bottom afterward, they hand you a bumper sticker. This car climbed Mount Washington. People stick them on the backs of minivans. Or you take the Cog Railway, running since 1869, a little steam and diesel train that grinds up the west side on a rack rail at an angle that feels impossible. Families ride it up in the morning and back down before lunch. And when you get to the top, there is a building waiting for you. A visitor center, a snack bar where you can buy a hot dog and a coffee, a gift shop, restrooms, a weather observatory staffed all year round. On a nice summer day, the summit of Mount Washington is crowded. Kids running around, people in shorts and sandals stepping out of a warm car into the sunshine to take a photo next to the sign. And that, right there, is the deadliest thing about this mountain. Because when you can drive to the top, your brain files the place under theme park, not wilderness. You see the cafe in the parking lot, and you think, how bad could it really be? There is a snack bar up here. Nobody puts a snack bar on top of something that kills people. But the cafe does not change the weather. The road does not change the weather. You can be standing next to a gift shop and still be standing in one of the most hostile pockets of air anywhere in the world. The comfort is real, and it is about 3 feet deep. Step past it, get caught out when the mountain turns, and none of it can reach you. So let me tell you why this specific mountain, out of all the mountains in the East, turned into a killer. Mount Washington sits at a crossroads, not a crossroads of trails, a crossroads of storms. The major storm tracks that sweep across North America, the ones rolling in off the Pacific Northwest, the ones charging up from the Gulf, the ones spinning along the Atlantic coast, they tend to funnel together and pass right over this corner of New Hampshire. The observatory on the summit has said it for years. This is a place where the weather of half a continent comes to collide. Now add the shape of the land. Mount Washington is not part of a long wall of equally tall peaks that share the load between them. It stands up above everything around it, the high point of the whole presidential range, poking straight into the path of that oncoming weather like a fist raised into a river. Wind moving fast across the flatter country slams into the mountain and has nowhere to go but up and over. And when you squeeze moving air like that, it speeds up. The terrain funnels it, accelerates it. By the time it reaches the summit, wind that was only a stiff breeze down in the valley has become something that can pick you up and throw you. That is why a mountain shorter than 1,000 others on Earth gets weather that belongs to the giants. It is not the height. It is the position. It is standing alone in exactly the wrong place, right where the storms cross. The summit sees hurricane-force wind, that is, wind above 74 miles an hour, on average about 100 days a year. Think about that for a second. 100 days a year, roughly 1 day in every 3, the air on top of this mountain is moving hard enough to knock a grown adult flat on the rocks. And the valley below can be dead calm while it happens. If you are finding this interesting, do me a quick favor and tap that like button. It genuinely helps these stories reach the people who ought to hear them. The ones lacing up their boots this weekend, thinking a little mountain like this, one can't hurt them. It takes you a second. It means a lot to me. Now let me tell you what that weather actually does. On the 12th of April, 1934, the men working at the Mount Washington Observatory watched their instruments climb into numbers they did not believe. The little wooden building was chained to the rock so it would not blow away, and it was shaking. One of them had to crawl outside and club the ice off the wind gauge just to keep it reading. And at 21 minutes past 1 in the afternoon, that gauge recorded a gust of 231 miles an hour. 231 miles an hour, that is faster than a Formula One car at full song. That is the kind of wind you would find inside a violent tornado. Except this was just weather, sitting on top of a mountain in New Hampshire. That gust set the world record for the fastest surface wind ever measured by human beings, anywhere on the planet. It held that record for more than 60 years, until 1996, when an automated station on a remote island off Australia finally beat it during a tropical cyclone. But here is the part that still stands today. That 231-mile-an-hour reading is the fastest wind ever recorded by a staffed weather station, by actual people at their posts. Nobody has ever measured a faster one and stood at the instrument to write it down. And the wind is only half of it. The cold is the other half, and the cold is the part that actually kills. The temperature up top can fall far below zero. Back in 1885, the summit recorded a low of 50 degrees below. In February of 2023, it recorded a wind chill of minus 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Minus 108. That is a national record. At that number, bare skin does not have minutes, it has seconds. The cold up there is so relentless, so much like the far north, that the plants and creatures clinging to the upper slopes are the kind you would normally have to travel hundreds of miles toward the Arctic to find. A little piece of the tundra stranded on a mountaintop in New England. That should tell you something about where you actually are when you step off that summit parking lot. But even those extremes are not the real danger. The real danger is the speed. This mountain does not warn you politely. You can start up the trail on a soft, sunny morning. Birds going, sweat on your back, and by the time you climb up above the trees, the whole world can change on you in under an hour. The clouds drop, the wind arrives. The temperature falls off a cliff, and the fog rolls in so thick and so white that you cannot see the next trail marker in front of your face. They call it a whiteout, and up on that bare, treeless ridge, every single direction looks identical. No landmarks, no horizon, just white in every direction. People have died a few hundred feet from safety because they simply could not see which way safety was. That is the trap, not the record wind, the change. The mountain lets you get comfortable, lets you climb high, lets you get committed. And then it turns. So what does that turn actually do to a human body? Let me walk you through it, because this is the part that usually gets skipped, and it is the part that matters most. When cold starts to win against your body, it does not happen all at once. It happens in stages, and the cruelest thing is the order they come in. First, your body tries to save itself. It pulls your warm blood in from your hands and feet toward your core, toward your heart and your lungs, protecting the organs that keep you alive. Your fingers and toes go numb. You start to shiver, hard, because shivering is your muscles burning fuel to make heat. This is the point where you can still fix it. More layers, shelter, get out of the wind, and you are okay. But if the cold keeps winning, you cross into something more dangerous. And the first thing you lose is your judgment. That is what people do not understand about freezing to death. You do not stay sharp right up until you suddenly stop. Your brain gets cold and your thinking goes fuzzy long before your body gives out. You get confused. You start making bad decisions, and the bad decisions feel like good ones. You wander off in the wrong direction, certain you are right. You decide to push for the summit when every ounce of sense says turn around. Some of the smartest, most capable people who ever died up here made a choice at the very end that looks insane from the outside. From the outside. Up close, it was quieter than that. Their brains were going cold and slowly failing, while the whole time they still felt like themselves. Then your coordination goes. Your hands stop working. You cannot manage a zipper, cannot light a stove, cannot dig out the gear that would save you. Your words start to slur. You stumble around like you were drunk. And then comes the strangest, saddest sign of all. The shivering stops, and it feels like relief. It feels like you are finally warming back up. You are not. Your body has simply run out of the fuel to keep fighting, and it is starting to give up. A deep drowsiness settles over you. You want to sit down. You want to rest, just for a minute. In the worst cases, right at the end, people even feel a rush of false warmth and start pulling their clothes off. And then they lie down in the snow, and they go to sleep, and they do not wake up. That is what the cold does, quietly, almost gently, at the very end. And it can do the whole thing to you in the space of one afternoon. I have told you the how. Now let me show you the who, because two people can walk this story out better than any explanation I could give you. Go back to the 14th of September, 1855. Late summer, sliding into fall, a 23-year-old woman named Lizzie Bourne came up from Kennebunk, Maine, with her Uncle George and her cousin Lucy to climb Mount Washington. This was long before the road, long before the railway, just a bridle path and a mountain. They got a late start, left the hotel at the base of the mountain around 2 in the afternoon, no guide, planning to reach the little lodge at the summit by nightfall. Lizzie was a young woman of her time, which meant she was climbing a mountain in a heavy dress, petticoats, layers of wool that some people have estimated weighed more than 30 pounds once it was soaked through. And it did get soaked. The weather turned on them the way it does here. They climbed into the afternoon, they climbed into the evening. The cold came up, and the wind came up, and the light drained out of the sky, and they realized they had no idea how much farther they had to go. So her uncle did the only thing he could. He piled up loose rocks into a little wall to break the wind, and the three of them huddled down behind it to wait for morning. Around 10 o'clock that night, George reached over to check on his niece. Lizzie was gone. The cold had taken her. And here is the detail that has haunted this mountain for almost 170 years. When the sun came up, her uncle and her cousin lifted their heads, looked up the slope, and saw the summit building. Warm, sheltered. A few hundred yards away, maybe 15 more minutes of walking, they had stopped, and she had died almost within shouting distance of a lit, heated room. Lizzie Bourne was the first woman known to die on Mount Washington. She would be very far from the last, and her story tells you something the record wind never could. She was not reckless. She was not a fool. She was a young woman on a family outing, on a mountain that everyone treated as a pleasant afternoon stroll. The mountain did not care. It has never cared. It was doing this before there was ever a road to drive up or a snack bar to buy your coffee in. Her Uncle George survived that night on the rocks, but he never really recovered from it. He carried the weight of what happened to Lizzie, and his health fell apart, and he was dead himself inside about 15 months. That is the long reach of a single afternoon on this mountain. It does not always stop with the person it takes. Now, you might be thinking, that was 1855. People did not know any better back then. Surely a modern expert with modern gear and a modern forecast would never get caught out like that. Let me finish the story I started. Kate Matrosova knew exactly what she was walking into. That is what makes her story so hard to sit with. The forecast that weekend was brutal, and it was no secret. The observatory was calling for wind gusts up to 125 miles an hour on the summits, and wind chills down around 70 below zero. She read it. She was a professional risk analyst by trade, a woman who studied danger for a living, and she made a calculated bet that she was fast enough to slip through, over the peaks and back down below the trees before the worst of it landed on her. She made it up Madison in the dark. She pushed on toward Adams, and somewhere up on that exposed, frozen ridge, the mountain caught her. The wind that day was strong enough to knock the rescuers who came looking for her flat onto the rocks. And these were big, strong mountain guides carrying heavy packs. Kate weighed about 125 pounds. Against that wind, on that ice, in that cold, strength and training stopped mattering. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, she stopped moving and triggered her emergency beacon. She knew she was in trouble. Rescuers went in that night, into 80-mile-an-hour wind and 20 below zero, and they had to turn back. They could not survive up there either. They went in again the next morning, and around 2 in the afternoon on the 16th of February, they found her near a small alpine pond called Star Lake. She had died of exposure. They found her with her headlamp still switched on. She had climbed Denali, she had climbed Aconcagua, and she died on a 6,288-foot mountain in New Hampshire, on a peak with a gift shop on top of it, 10 miles from a heated observatory. If you take one thing away from this, take that. The mountain is not impressed by your resume. So why do people keep dying here? The same way, over and over, decade after decade. Part of it is a thing climbers call summit fever. You have invested the early wake up, the long drive, the climb, the money, the plan you told all your friends about. And the top is right there. When the weather starts to go, every reasonable instinct says turn around, but this other little voice says, you are so close. Do not waste it. Just push a bit further. That voice has killed a lot of good people. The summit will always be there next week. Sometimes you will not be. But the deeper problem with Mount Washington is something sneakier. Call it the competence trap. The better you are, the more the mountain can use against you. A total beginner might look at that ridge, feel afraid, and stay home. But the experienced climber looks at 6,288 feet and does the math. I have done rainier, I have done bigger, colder, higher, harder than this. This is a training hill, and that math is exactly wrong, because the number on the sign has almost nothing to do with the danger. This mountain does not kill you with altitude. It kills you with wind and cold and speed, and none of those care how many big peaks you have stood on. And then there is the everyday version, the one that catches the families and the day hikers. It is only 6,288 feet. I can see the parking lot from here. There is a snack bar up top. I will just go take a quick look. That is the whole trek of this place, and I want to say it as plainly as I can. Everything that makes Mount Washington feel safe is exactly what makes it dangerous. The road tells your gut the place is tame. The cafe tells your gut that somebody is in charge up there. The crowds tell your gut you will be fine because everybody else seems fine. And so you step out onto that ridge carrying less fear than you would bring to a mountain half as deadly. And the mountain has been waiting for precisely that. The people who die up here are almost never the ones who were scared. They are the ones who were comfortable. And every time somebody guesses wrong up there, somebody else has to go up after them. This mountain keeps a whole network of search and rescue teams busy, a lot of them volunteers, ordinary people who drop what they are doing and climb into the same 80-mile-an-hour wind that just beat a hiker, on the chance they can bring that hiker home. They went up for Cape Matrosova twice, in conditions that nearly killed them too. Every rescue on that ridge is somebody betting their own life on a stranger's. So when I ask you to respect this place, I am not only asking for your sake. I am asking for theirs. There is a sign on this mountain. It stands right at tree line, at the edge of the woods, at the exact spot where you leave the shelter of the trees and step out onto the open exposed alpine zone. The Forest Service put it there. And it does not mince words. It reads, "Stop. The area ahead has the worst weather in America. Many have died there from exposure, even in the summer. Turn back now if the weather is bad, even in the summer." Read that part again. On a warm July afternoon, with the sun on the back of your neck. That sign is telling you the plain truth. People have frozen to death, in shorts, on the far side of that line, in the middle of summer. The mountain is not hiding anything from you. It put the warning in writing and nailed it to a post. All it asks is that you believe it. The people who lived in these mountains long before us understood something that we keep having to learn the hard way. The Abenaki had a name for Mount Washington, Agiokokok, home of the Great Spirit. They believed the peak belonged to something far bigger than any person. And out of respect, many of them would not climb to the very top at all. We built a road instead. And look, I am not telling you to be afraid of this mountain. I am telling you to respect it, which is a very different thing, because on the right day, with the right preparation an honest forecast, and the humility to turn around, Mount Washington is one of the most magnificent places you will ever stand. The view runs for 100 miles in every direction. The rime ice coats every rock and every railing like white coral. It is genuinely, beautifully strange up there. I have stood on that summit on a clear morning and felt lucky to be alive in the plain, ordinary meaning of the words. The mountain was here long before the auto road, long before the cog railway, long before the gift shop and the snack bar and the bumper stickers. It stood in the path of those storms for millions of years before the first person ever tried to walk up it, and it will be standing right there, taking the full force of that weather, long after every bit of that is gone. It does not know your name. It does not know you drove up. It does not care how strong you are, or how far you have climbed, or how nice the morning looked from the parking lot. It is simply the mountain, doing what it has always done. Kate Matrosova understood that better than most of us ever will, and it still took her. Lizzie Bourne died a few minutes from a warm room. More than 160 people, across more than 170 years, walked out onto that ridge, underestimating it, and never walked back. One last thing, and I mean this. Nothing I have told you today is trip advice. I am not your guide, and this is not a plan. Conditions on that mountain change faster than almost anywhere on Earth. So if you ever do go, check the observatory's forecast at very morning, respect what it tells you, and be willing to turn around with the summit in plain sight. The people who make it home are the ones who are willing to fail. If this was worth your time, subscribe and stick around. I have got more of these coming, more places that look gentle and aren't. And I would like you to be a little wiser and a lot safer the next time you stand at the bottom of something beautiful. Looking up, the mountain will be there. Make sure that you are too.